for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock.
My guest today is Jake Goldbas, the drummer for Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway. Jake has played with a number of different artists over the years, including people like Aretha Franklin, Dave Brubeck, Patty Austin, Joshua Redman, Stefan Harris, and Christian McBride. Jake earned both his bachelor's and master's degrees at Manhattan School of Music as a recipient of a presidential scholarship. In 2010, he was nominated for a Grammy Award with Bobby Sanabria and the MSM Afro-Cuban Jazz Orchestra on the album Kenya Revisited Live. Jake was appointed musical director for the National Arts Awards, where he led tributes to Tony Bennett, Herbie Hancock, Lady Gaga, and Esperanza Spalding. Jake and I had a really fun conversation on the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. Stay tuned for more. Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Jake Goldbas. We have something in common, which I just found out. We are nutmeggers.
That's right. 860, baby. We're here.
Don't mess. A gang sign for this?
I don't know how to do three things with my hands. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The 860, I never heard that. It's funny, man. I'm going to start saying that. People are like, what?
Yeah, it's not a tough area code. Yeah.
Hardcore, man. Suburbs, man. You know what?
Right.
When I was a kid, and first of all, I love the movie The Warriors for some reason. I just find it like it's a cult classic. It's bad, but
right.
it's still, I don't know, something intriguing about it. But back when I was a kid, I used to want to have a gang, and we called ourselves the Condors.
The Condors. We're large birds. Yeah. That's right.
Don't fuck with us, man.
That's right. Condors, come on. I'm into it.
Oh man, well, welcome.
I'm an honorary Condor today.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna initiate you into the gang of the Condors.
Okay, cool. We just talk about Broadway stuff. Yeah,
that's how hardcore we are, man.
That's right. 8 shows a week, baby. Yeah,
don't fuck with us.
That's right.
So, you're from Connecticut, from Simsbury.
Yeah, from Simsbury. Grew up outside of Hartford. Lived in New York City until I was about 8. Moved around a bit in and out of the city, but yeah, loved growing up outside of Hartford and Simsbury. Got to go to a really great performing arts magnet school called the Greater Hartford Academy for the Performing Arts, where I was really lucky to study with some just amazing musicians. And one of the special things about the school is that you didn't have to have a teaching certificate to teach at the school. You just had to be a badass artist. So the best artists in Connecticut and in that area were teaching at the school. And so I felt like I was really getting, just the real deal. I mean, they were all amazing teaching artists and really, amazing at just capturing the essence of what it means to be a great artist. But yeah, I learned a lot. Really great drummer named Jim Oblon, who, plays for Paul Simon now and a million folks. Great saxophonist Jimmy Green. That really mentored me, and thankful for it.
What was it that got you into drums?
So growing up, like going in and out of the city, I remember I was maybe like 4 or 5, and we were going to a museum or something, or maybe we were going to see a Broadway show or something, but we were at one of those subway stations that has like an express train and a local train going by either side in one of those platforms. And I remember I was looking around, and everybody was kind of like, disgruntled classic New Yorker situation where people like weren't looking up from the newspaper, just, everybody's in their own little world. And then this guy set up these 3 buckets and had these sticks that were like whittled down to nothing. I don't even think you could call them drumsticks anymore. And he started playing the most infectious groove, and people like put down their newspaper, started looking at each other, smiling. And I just remember feeling the groove and just thinking, I want to have that kind of power. So I got home and just like rummaged through all the recyclables and started creating my own little kit. And yeah, the rest is history.
Your parents bought you a drum set shortly afterwards?
No, they said, they got me a practice pad and said that if I took drum lessons and stuck with the practice pad for a year, that they would get me something. And then my mom worked for the Connecticut Commission on the Arts. And I remember there was like a custodian or something who had an old Slingerland kit. And it was one holiday season I got that drum kit after having the pad for a while. And just, I had the practice pad, but then I was just grabbing buckets and stuff. And I made it into a drum kit until I had a drum kit.
Did you start taking private lessons right after that?
I did. I have like extreme ADD. And so drum lessons were always tough for me. Like I never wanted to like learn how to read music. And, I was always just like wanted them to show me the tricks and show me the thing that they would do that was kind of fancy and just like hyper focus on that. So I feel like I just jumped around from teacher to teacher until I really like landed in high school and kind of like gotten to a place where drum lessons were really valuable to me.
Was there a drummer or drummers that you looked up to when you were, in that phase of your life that you're like, you know what, I want to be like this?
Yeah, definitely. I was obsessed with like Mambo and Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez and all these guys. And I loved like timbales and congas. And I just wanted to be in that. I don't know. I just love the way that a timbale player like directs the band and guides like the ultimate quarterback. Like everything is just a perfect play. So I just loved Tito Puente, loved Tito Rodriguez. Who else? I mean, I loved rock and pop and hip hop and, pretty much I didn't really get into jazz deeply until I was in high school. So, once I hit high school, that flood of Art Blakey and Elvin Jones and Philly Joe Jones and all of the, masters of jazz and the legends kind of came into my life and took over for that following 10 years, probably, from like 14 to 24, I was just deep diving. Still am, but yeah.
Was there any kind of rock or other pop influences in your life, or was it mostly focused on the jazz players?
No, I was, my dad was a huge Tower Power fan. So early on, my folks are not musicians. They're, visual artists and like in the arts world. And they are just huge music lovers. And so my dad was always playing records and I would listen to David Garibaldi. I remember this really funny moment looking back on it where my dad was like, this is two drummers. It's got to be two drummers like in Tower Power. And now looking back, I'm like, no, David Garibaldi's just playing the crap out of those drums. But so, listen to like Back to Oakland, those records were really influential early on. I was trying to play along to them. My dad would like crank the stereo and I would just play along, try to get it going.
From what I understand, you won some awards when you were at that age, right? Didn't you win some kind of awards when you were in high school?
Yeah, I think, it was definitely the world of like jazz competitions and things where, I applied to everything, not really expecting to get any sort of, recognition, but I got an award from the National Young Arts Foundation. They had a group where you audition. The organization's still around. It does amazing work, where they award kind of the best and brightest high schoolers in every arts discipline. And so they pick a jazz group. They pick one person on each instrument to create a jazz combo, and they send you down to Miami for a week. And you work with like Wynton Marsalis and a bunch of different, famous world-renowned artists in a kind of hyper-focused way. And they send you out to like perform at the Monterey Jazz Festival, and they sent us to like Paris. It was a whole thing in high school. And it really, up until then, I didn't think I could really have a career in the arts, and young arts really kind of solidified and gave me that extra boost of confidence to chase it.
Did you know what kind of direction you wanted to go in? Did you say, at that point, I want to play drums for Dear Evan Hansen? Well, there wasn't that show at the time, but
right. I always had the highest respect for Broadway and for the musicians that played in pits. And I thought, that seemed like a dream that was unattainable at that age for me. I didn't even dream of playing in a Broadway pit. I kind of just dreamed of making money, playing drums, doing anything, whatever that meant. It didn't have to be a dream gig to me. It was just, I was just kind of hustling throughout high school, and I was playing a lot of restaurant gigs. Right from the second I could get my license, I was driving around the state and playing with older musicians and just kind of observing how they operated in the world, and just trying to soak up everything about. I just really admired people who could make a living in the arts, and I just kind of was hyper focused on the joy of bringing music into people's lives.
After high school, you went to study music in college.
Yes, I went to the Manhattan School of Music for my undergraduate and then master's degree.
Now, why Manhattan School of Music? And I always ask this to people: why not Berkeley or Juilliard or North Texas State or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, the honest answer is that I met. Hey, come on, you cut.
8-6.
I think the totally right. 8-6 Condors, and we the totally honest answer is that I met some amazing musicians that were put in that group for young arts with me in my last year of high school. We went down to Miami and traveled around, and the bass player from that band was this amazing bassist who became a really close friend named Jeff Picker. And he was a bass player that was not just better than any bass player I had played with up until that point. He was just light years and exponentially, became like home base for me as a drummer. And I just thought, hey, Jeff, like, we applied to the same schools, wherever you pick, I'm going to go. And so, he said, I want to do MSM. I said, let's do it. So we were roommates, and it just was, I knew that if I went there with Jeff, I was going to have a great bass player to play with. And we know as drummers, that's everything. And so I knew I would continue to be able to like develop as a drummer wherever I went, because I had the hunger to do it. But knowing that Jeff was going to be there, was just made the decision a little easier.
So you got to New York City, and were you doing a lot of gigs while you were in school at the same time, or was school taking up most of your focus?
I was always doing a million things. Like I said, I have like extreme ADD. So I was like, hyper focused on playing in the bands that were at school. And, Manhattan School of Music is a pretty like heavy duty conservatory. So a lot of musicians that were getting their master's degree there were professional musicians out in the real world, who they might have been in their 30s or 40s that were coming back to get a master's after touring around the world. And so they were there and would have last minute opportunities to like sub a rehearsal in their band. If, Jeff Tain Watts was going to play with them, but he couldn't make the rehearsal, they'd say like, hey, Jake, I'm like this young, hungry drummer who could hang a little bit. They would say, hey, can you cover this rehearsal from 2:30 to 4 until Jeff can come? And I'd be like, yes, of course. Wow. I'll be there. And, I'll shine in his shoes. I'll do whatever. You know what I mean? So I was there to just do as much as I could. And, if people asked me to play a gig that was, a guitarist from Colombia would say like, hey, do you know how to play like this, weird 6/8 thing from Colombia? I have a gig next week. I'd be like, yeah, I know how to do it. And then I just figure out how to do it before that next week gig. And just, I was always, say yes, then figure it out. Was kind of my motto.
That's great, man. That's great. You got your master's degree. Now, what made you decide to go that route? I mean, did you want to have a degree so you can teach, or you just want to just keep learning?
I wasn't sure what I was going to want to do with it, but I knew that if I left, I wouldn't want to go back. And so I felt like, I was all set up. I had a good thing going. I was playing in, the jazz orchestra, like the Philharmonic there, where it's like the orchestra and the big band. And it was really kind of a thrill. And I just thought, I really enjoyed, I got to study with the guru, John Riley, who, really just kicked my ass consistently for all 6 years that I got to study with him. And so, getting an opportunity to work with him for an extra 2 years, it was a no-brainer. I was really lucky to get some assistance from the school to make it happen too. So it just made sense in the moment.
Did you do any tours right after that, or did you stay in New York City? What was your path right after college?
Yeah, right after college, I was just working. I was really lucky to tour these first few years after school with a great jazz vocalist by the name of Alan Harris. And Alan does like a Nat King Cole tour and a bunch of different, he really covered a lot of ground and he had a lot of international recognition. And so, he also been kind of like a breeding ground for New York drummers like Greg Hutchinson and Obed Calvert and Drum Jennings. All these guys had worked with Alan. And so just getting the opportunity, it all just worked out where, a friend of mine kind of became his MD right out of school, Pascal LeBoeuf. And so hired me onto the scene. And I just, 2 weeks after graduating, we were playing at the Umbria Jazz Festival and doing a lot of European touring. And, we just did long stretches. He was really as close to like an old school entertainer gig as you could get. You know what I mean? He really knew how to transform any crowd, whether it was like a really cold, audience in the middle of nowhere that wasn't ready for it. He was just able to turn it on, like had all the tricks, the jokes, the winks, the, silky voice. I was learning a lot from him and his wife, Pat, as his manager, and just watching the two of them operate. That was kind of those first 2 years. We had a weekly gig at Smoke on 106th Street in Broadway every Sunday. And so that was kind of a goal of mine, like moving to New York. I was like, I just get a weekly gig at like a great jazz club where I can play the house kid and, get in there. So getting to do Sundays there with him, it was just kind of a nice grounding part of my early career out of school.
Well, you went on to perform with people like Patty Austin and Aretha Franklin, and Dave Brubeck, and Stephon Harris. Did that come?
Yeah. No, those are all different. Just different stories, kind of through that time. Through like finishing high school and being in college, and each of those names that you just mentioned is its own hour. Like I got to work with.
All right, I got some time.
I know, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, tell me about Patty Austin, because I loved Patty and Dave Brubeck and Aretha. But tell me a little bit about Patty. How'd you get to work with Patty Austin? I'm curious.
I got to work with Patty through Alan Harris. So the gentleman we were just speaking with, Patty would come maybe like once or twice a year to Smoke, to that Sunday residency that we had. And she would come up, and I think, one time she sang it from her seat, like the there I go, there I go, there I go, there I go, like Moody's Mood for Love. And Alan and Patty would do it as a duet, and they were old friends. And then Patty was like with somebody at her table and got my number, and then I got to work with her for like a few dates. It was like in the Midwest or something. But yeah, that was kind of the Patty Austin hurricane that came through my life. It wasn't, it was a very, just special experience to hear someone's voice that you grow up listening to, coming out of your monitor,
That's so cool, man. She has one of the greatest voices ever. And I think she's, I don't know if I would say she's underrated, because she's done so many great things, but a lot of people don't really know how many things she's done, especially back in the day when she used to do a lot of jingles, and her voice was everywhere.
Her voice was everywhere. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I got to record, I guess this is like 2 or 3 years ago, with the OJs for their last record called The Last Word. And Betty Wright, who actually just passed away, was one of the producers, and kind of like she was in there the whole time and really hands-on in the whole process of making the record. And I felt like Betty was a real bucket list for me, because she really had her hands on so much of soul music, over the last, 100 years. It's really like, she was a real turning point,
She sang Clean Up Woman, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Great guitar line that a lot of rappers sampled and stole.
Exactly. Totally. And she worked with, a lot of like, Pharrell and P. Diddy, and all of those guys really leaned on Betty for a lot of their hits. She was like in the room for a lot of that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. One other story, then we'll go to another topic I want to talk about. Aretha Franklin. Tell me about Aretha Franklin.
Yeah. I got connected to Aretha through a mentor of mine growing up, the great Bernard Purdie, who his wife was a jazz singer that I got to work with, and Bernard just I met him really early on, and I was one of like a million young, hungry drummers that just wanted to ask him a million questions. But I kind of like held off and just wanted to create a relationship with him. And I really just appreciated his kindness to me over the years. And he connected me to Aretha's team, and I got to play percussion in Aretha's band for a couple dates upstate. This was like maybe a year before she passed away. And yeah, I just remember Bernard like coming in and out of my life since I've played the drums, as a really like warm and encouraging character. Like he's brought me on to some various boards of nonprofit organizations that he was involved in. He's like got, I don't know. I had this one gig that I played. I'm not going to name any names, but I played this gig at Birdland with an artist who I was really close friends with, this singer, and she had a group of artists that she had worked with a lot, this band. And she wanted me to play percussion on her gig. It was like a CD release show. And so I was the outside person, friends with her, but not friends with the rest of the band, coming in and just doing my thing. But the drummer just kind of had it out for me. Like he just was not like being a nice person. This was like, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. And so I'm in the rehearsals. It was the music of James Taylor and Carole King. And there's not much like percussion action to happen on those tunes. I'm playing some shakers, some congas, it's like light stuff. And in the rehearsal, the drummer, he's just being so cold, like won't look at me. I'm trying to just like make a connection, just get like a warm energy happening. And, at the beginning of one tune before we started rehearsing, I was like, hey, so yeah, like what do you think you want me to play on this one, just because it was another tune that could have gone in any direction. If he wanted to have me lay out for a while and play some certain, and he looked at me and he was like, I don't know what you should play, was what he said to me in the story. So I was like, oh, okay, come on. So then we get to the gig at Birdland, and it was one of the early sets. It was like 6 to 8. And the band after us was Kevin Mahogany, and Bernard was playing drums. I had no idea that Bernard was going to be there that night. So I was playing, and Bernard Purdie walks through the door, massive presence, and walks directly up to the front of the bandstand, like the edge of the stage, looks at me and goes like this, like gives me like a big air hug and like praise hands. For those who are, just listening in, he just walked right up the stage, right to me, not to anyone else. And then the whole band, all these guys who've been such jerks to me through the rehearsal process, start smiling at me, like looking at me in the eye, like enjoying every little moment of what I'm doing. And then after, asking me if I can introduce them to Bernard.
What?
And it was just such a funny moment where maybe Bernard actually came in there and realized that these guys were giving me the cold shoulder for no reason and wanted to like change the temperature, because he's just a master of energy in a room. And I was so thankful to him just making that into a turning point of like, yeah, you know what? I'm not doing anything wrong here. I'm just playing this.
He came in and just anointed you. He's like,
he came in and he united me. Right. Yeah.
Here's the crown.
Excalibur. Yeah. I'm playing shaker. I wasn't doing anything special.
It's like, Bernard, now you want to say, be nice to me. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes that happens. It's like, I'm the same person that I was last week. And I don't know, man. Yeah,
you just have to treat everybody like they're your colleague for life,
Exactly. You just never know. This business is cyclical, and it's up and down, and when you're on the way up, the same people you meet on the way up are probably the same people you're going to meet on the way down. And
totally.
There's going to be downs. So
yeah.
we need to support each other, and just don't, I have a post on Instagram that features a motto that says, be good to people. And people should just do that.
Yeah, it's not that. It's not rocket science. We're not out here curing cancer. Like the stakes are, at the end of the day, we're trying to make people feel good. And
exactly.
Yeah. So it was, And I think Bernard just really knew how to make people feel good and make people feel seen.
Whether it's just his presence or through his drumming.
Definitely.
What other than just realizing his aura, what is one thing that you'd say that you learned from Bernard?
He always told me like one line of advice, and he wouldn't go in depth about it. He would never get like musically scientific about things. And I really appreciated this like esoteric mindset about like for example, I'd play a gig, I'd come off stage and he would look at me and he'd be like, eating something and like having a beer. And he would just be like, Jake, if you want to work forever, you got to put the bass drum right where the singer wants it. And I'd be like, okay, I'll think about that for like months. You know what I mean? Every day I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, right where the singer wants it. Okay, where's that going to be? And and the more you think about it though, when the bass drum is in the right place on the downbeat and it actually is, an intentional ass bass drum on the downbeat where the singer wants it, you work for life. It's like, that is kind of the key. So it was a lot of things like that, and maybe it was because that night, maybe he watched me like take a cue from a singer and I, didn't direct the band in correctly. So, it might've just been, instead of him dissecting that, he gave me something to chew on.
That's great, man. I remember talking to Buddy Williams years ago when I first got to New York, and he would lay some wisdom on me too, and little nuggets of wisdom would come out here and there, and you kind of got to listen to the people that are successful because they're successful for a reason. So whatever they say, listen to what they have to say, and then try to digest it and regurgitate it. I don't know if that's the right
Absolutely.
way.
No, I know what you mean. Absorb it and let it, it comes out naturally. Like you don't have to force a lesson like that. It's just something that's in the back of your mind and you live with.
Well, speaking of words of wisdom, since you've done so much in your life so far and you have so much more to go, what's one thing that you would say to a young person coming to New York City now? Well, I know I'm saying now, but yeah, it's a different scene now because of what happened. But someone that wants to become a professional musician in New York City, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them?
One piece of advice. I feel like, there's obviously a million things I could say about the craft of drumming and being a part of, a musical unit and all of those things that you have to pay attention to. But there's so much that you can do as an artist, as a musician, to put yourself in another league before you even play a note. And so I would say there's one thing, if you're not early, you're late. And so if you're not early, you're late, you will automatically be in another category of people that someone's going to hire. You just automatically will be there's a whole legion of folks that are not early. Maybe they're right on time. Maybe they're like 2 minutes, 5 minutes late. If you're not early, you're late. And if you come into New York with that mindset and you stick to it for like ever, then I think that will automatically be a step up in the competition of, concrete jungle.
I got to remember that myself. I keep fucking up, man. Maybe that's why I can't keep a gig. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I'm going to have to go back to the gang life, man.
Condors. If you're not early, you're late. Condors. Assemble. Yeah.
So, throwing up my C sign.
That's right.
So, I think the last time I saw you was on a subway platform after a show. You were at Dear Evan Hansen. In the before times. I was at Ain't Too Proud and you were at Dear Evan Hansen, and we wound up taking the subway back uptown. Now, you do all kinds of music, and I was checking out some of your videos and watching something that you did recently, I guess, with Michael Olatuja doing Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Man, I love playing with Michael, man. He is just, he has a feel. And plus his energy, again, he's a kind of person. Aura. Yeah, he has the aura of just niceness, but his playing just speaks for itself. And I saw some other stuff on YouTube, which you're doing a lot of creative stuff, which I think is just you have a way of expressing yourself on the drums. You had something where you were playing with like a cymbal on the snare drum, and it was outside, and there was a dancer. I forgot what that was.
Oh, yeah. That was a project years ago that a really great artist who I've worked with named Kenyon Adams. He's the artistic director at a place called Grace Farms in Connecticut. And before they were building this new structure, they wanted to bring artists out to like break the ground before, when it was a construction site before they put up the theater. And so he said, we bring out some artists. I got, a great dancer friend of mine, Raymond Pinto, and two other musicians, Jonathan Raganese on saxophone and Russell Hall on bass. And we just improvised for like 10 minutes while the sun was coming down in that golden hour with a really good filmmaker named Ben Stamper. And we, created something to just, I guess, bless the area before the structure went up.
It's beautiful, man. It reminds me of the things that I used to do playing in different bands and just being really, really creative. Now it's the complete opposite of what we do as a musician on a Broadway show. You had to do the same thing in the same way, pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's like 99%
exactly the same
thing.
Right. It's locked.
Tell me how you got the gig at Dear Evan Hansen.
So I think, everybody gets a gig because they know somebody on some level. And I had a friend who, became like family now, named Jamie Eblin, who's an amazing Broadway drummer and just drummer in all styles. And so I knew Jamie kind of just through our mutual friend groups. He was at NYU when I was at Manhattan School of Music. And, we just had a lot of friends throughout time. And he was playing Dear Evan Hansen at Second Stage when it was off Broadway. And I think, I had only subbed on one Broadway show before that, on The Color Purple. And I know you are also subbing in there. That's kind of like my first, exposure to you was like in an email chain from Jared about, a change up in the charts or something. I was like, oh, Clayton Craddock. Oh man, he's like playing all these different Broadway shows. Crazy. So so I met Jamie. I kind of just like cold messaged him knowing that we were, just friends through our mutual friends were like really close mutual friends. Like the people who we both were really close with, we just knew each other through them. So I reached out and told him I would just want to come and see the show and watch him play it. And he, was kind enough to let me come into this like tiny little drum nest at Second Stage that, I think at the time didn't have air conditioning in it. It was like a little sweat shed that he was, working out, 8 shows a week for the, few months that they were doing the run. And I heard the music, thought the music was amazing. And he told me, there were murmurs of them going to Broadway. And I was a little too busy, I think, in those 2 months to sub on the off-Broadway show because I knew I was going to have to prepare it and then maybe just get to do it once. And so he said, no worries. I have some folks coming in right now, but I'd love to come and have you sub if it comes to Broadway. So then when I got the news that it was coming to Broadway, I worked on the book before they opened and got in there and subbed. I think it opened early December, and I subbed my first show in like early January, like a month into the run. So I was in there really early, and fortunately enough for me, Jamie's like one of the most sought after drummers in New York and was working on a bunch of other shows and different things that were taking him away from the show for extended periods of time. And so I was covering leaves of absence for, 6 or 8 weeks. He did this Prince of Broadway show out in Japan for like, 2 or 3 months. And I got to do the show 8 shows a week for those 3-month periods. So it allowed me to become second in command behind Jamie. And then when Jamie finally decided to leave the show for some other opportunities, I got to take over. So I feel like I've been a part of the show since its, beginnings on Broadway, but I always have to give, a major shout out to Jamie for the opportunity. It changed my life to have my first Broadway chair.
So what did you do to prepare to sub the show?
Oh man, I probably played, the actual, I'm a good reader. I can read music well at this point, but because I was not always a good reader, I feel like I have to work like 3 times harder than everybody else when it comes to something with charts. So I just go a little insane and I just listen to 16 bar phrases. a million times and write down in pencil over the chart exactly what Jamie was doing and taking videos of him and listening to it nonstop, getting it up to the point where I could play the show fully with the conductor cam that was like in a Dropbox that Jamie had sent me. And so I practiced along to that with the charts, and leading up to doing the show, I played the show every day, fully the show as if I was doing the show. And I played it every day for probably like 30 days leading up to the time when I did it, so that by the time somebody told me that you're ready to sub a Broadway show, if by the time you play your first show, you're totally sick of it.
Absolutely. Oh my God. That's the greatest thing anyone said on this podcast so far. No,
so I just went completely over, I went completely overkill to the point where, Jamie knew that I was taking it seriously, because when I would come in to watch him, I would be like, oh, like, are you dropping the shaker on beat 2 or on, the and of 2, or just tiny minutia that I knew I wanted to do it exactly like Jamie. If he was going like, boom, bang, I was going to play my right hand on this far crash and my right hand on this middle crash, and not boom, to left, because I knew that it would sound different than if I was crossing over just like Jamie. So I tried to sit the way he did, just do everything exactly like him. And, the best Broadway subs are invisible. You don't even know they're subs. And that's, I think, just something that, as someone who has a chair, is no news is good news when you have a sub come in.
Yeah, I've told stories of when I did off-Broadway shows and I would take off, and then I was at a wedding one time and I saw a call from the musical director. I was like, it was like, 11 o'clock, and I'm like, oh man, what's going on? Then I called and found out the person was not allowed to come back for
oh snap,
because they changed the sound of the V drums and other stuff. But
oh my God. Yeah, it's like, dude, we're not going for the donkey vibe. Yeah, we don't want donkey sound. This is Fiddler on the Roof. Come on, man. Yeah, get out of here.
It was a mess, but yeah, you don't want to get that call. And you don't want to, say, how did this person do last night? Oh, no. So, yeah. What advice would you give to someone that wants to sub and, they, want to sub Dear Evan Hansen? What would you recommend that they do? Do the same thing you did or something different?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it when it comes to playing. It's right if you sound exactly like the drummer that's doing it. And when you're playing it exactly the way the drummer's doing it, because you can't even hear the drummer when you're playing along to the Dropbox thing. If you can hear a fill they're playing that you're not playing exactly what they're doing on that, that part or whatever it is. Just every piece of minutia, you have to just go above and beyond, because then you're ready for if there's, if a singer rushes or if the click messes up or if something happens, you're so ready to do it because you're not even thinking about the music. You need to become like, you need to be parachuting above yourself when all the nerves set in and when certain things happen, because you're a part of something so much larger than just the drummer. So that's what I really appreciate about Broadway, is the stakes are so high that, I enjoy that fear of just like, I can't mess this up. And the fact that I get scared every time, the lights come down and you get the call. I think that's what's so special about it. It's everyone in that building really cares deeply, even if it over time turns into, a very like fun hang, down in the locker room or wherever you're like hanging out beforehand. I know, guys, it seems like they're not about to play a show because they're just relaxing, having a cup of coffee, like talking about the Yankees or whatever. And then 2 seconds later, it's game time. And these are the best in the world that, take it really seriously. And so the stakes are high. And I'm just thinking about sub stuff, and it's bringing me to another story. I'm sorry, but the first show that I ever subbed was The Color Purple, and I had never subbed for a show before. And so I, obviously like went insane and just like drove myself crazy getting ready for it. And Jared asked me if I could play, it was Valentine's Day, 2 shows with a potential third on that Sunday. And it was kind of like, if you do well at this matinee, you got the evening show. Like I have somebody, he's like, I kind of have somebody else lined up, but like, he wanted me to like do a couple, whatever. And I remember I got in there that day and I had been practicing so hard and I'd been down there a bunch of times and I actually knew Michael Olatuja really well because I'd worked with him in his band. And that's kind of like the way that I was able to get in there was because Michael vouched for my, professionalism in that situation. And the drummer who had subbed for me who had subbed for Jared the night before I came in had really messed up and something went really wrong in the show. And that person didn't get called back. I don't know who it was. I still don't really actually know who it was, but the drummer is usually invisible in these situations, especially, you're a sub, the actors don't know fully what's going on, but because a sub had messed up the night before, Jennifer Hudson, Cynthia Erivo, Danielle, everybody in that cast came by the drums before the show started to say, "You good? You good?" And this is the first time I've ever subbed on a Broadway show. I was so scared. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I'm good. You know what I mean? They knew, they had heard, I was shedding down there, beforehand. I was like playing through the bows and like, they had heard that I'm okay. I think the musicians weren't worried, about me, but it was just so, as someone who now I know how weird that is for a sub to actually like have the cast on my ass before the show for my first show. That is not normal. So I was extra nervous, but it obviously, it went fine. And I got to do the rest of the weekend.
Every night they would, at least Danielle would come and mess with Jason or whoever in the pit. And she was so funny. She kept,
I know.
in my experience, she would like alleviate some of the tension with her antics down there. But yeah,
totally.
See, it's funny. First time I met Jennifer Hudson was backstage. She was just chilling. And I was like, "Hi, my name is Clayton. I'm subbing at the show." She's like, "Hi, my name is Jennifer Hudson." I was like, "I know who you are."
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Jennifer who?
You're like, I knew
Who?
exactly. Yeah. You said Jennifer Floodson? Sorry, cool. Yeah, nice. Cool.
You're in the ensemble, right? It's like,
yeah, right. Oh, cool. Stage manager, or what are you bringing in sushi? What's happening? Yeah. No, that is hilarious.
Man, that cast was just off the chain, man. And just listen to Cynthia Erivo. My God.
Oh my. Yeah. It was amazing. It was such a thrill to have that be my, first opportunity to play in a Broadway pit, play with Michael and
yes,
just everybody, Alvin,
yes.
that whole crew down there. I just had so much admiration and respect for the way that they brought it. It always felt real. You know what I mean? I got to see, I was like next to people, we were rocking out.
Yep.
It felt really nice. And so, yeah, it was a really great experience. And I think that really allowed me, to get a foot in the door so that when I reached out to Jamie, he knew, because he knew I could play because he had seen me play some random bar gigs and things that, he knew I could play, but being able to actually be in the belly of the beast is a different thing. So I think him knowing that I successfully didn't get booted out of the Color Purple, sub scene, it meant something to him in terms of the trust in me to sub for him.
So speaking of subs, what thing would you say to someone that wants to be a Broadway musician? What should they never do?
Oh, I think there's a couple things, but I think it's a lot of times it's like more nuanced than the obvious situation. So I think like for me, even though I have a lot to talk about with other musicians downstairs when we're off stage, and I have a lot of things I can add to the conversations, I think the band, especially at Dear Evan Hansen, really appreciated that I was allowing that to be their space before the show began and not necessarily needing to jump into every conversation. And I think as a sub, you're coming into someone's place of work that they go every day, basically, except for Mondays, 52 weeks out of the year. And I tried to really allow that to be a sacred space for those musicians. And yeah, I think sometimes it's more just filtering yourself from the second you walk through that door, just to know that just take a back seat. And there's a lot going on here. And sometimes you just don't need to even make an impression. And over time, you'll make an impression and let your work speak for itself.
Man, you are like full of like deep thoughts here, man. I like this, man. If you don't, what's the last thing you said? If you don't leave an impression, you leave an impression. What was the
something? I don't know. We'll have to play it back.
Yeah,
we can always fix it in post production. It's going to sound so nice. He's gonna make this. This is going to be 4 minutes long, I think, by the end of it.
Man, oh man. So, how long were you? Did you have the Dear Evan Hansen gig before the shutdown?
I was about 2 years before the shutdown. But like I said, I was kind of doing like half the shows for the first 2 years because Jamie was taking a lot of leaves of absences. And so he had these various shows that he'd leave to play. And so it felt like I was the drummer the whole time. I kind of had this really nice relationship with the show. And so, I was going into my third year of playing the show full time. And it was, and I feel like I was just starting to get, into the flow of having the chair, and there's a lot of stuff that I just learned, and I'm excited to kind of get a clean slate going back into it in December when we reopen on December 11th. I'm excited to like try and do it better than I did last time. I think I feel good about how I was playing the show and everything, but there's a whole system to keeping track of your chair, not just with subs, but with all the equipment and, like marking when heads need to be changed and when sticks need to be ordered and all these things that I'm excited to kind of, it's that feeling of going back to school. It's like you want to get your pencils in order and you want to make sure your backpack is fresh. It was like, that's my vibe going into this. So
when you were taking over for
Jamie.
Yeah, for Jamie. I'm sorry. When you're taking over for Jamie during the leaves of absence, were you in charge of the subs coming in, or was he in charge of that?
I was in charge of getting subs, and I really wanted to have the chair someday and have a chair someday, and I knew that it would make a good impression on the musical director, Ben Cohn, and to the contractor, Michael Ahrens, that I was taking care of business when I was in there. So, I made sure that, subs were booked like way in advance. I was trying to do 6, 7, 8 shows a week while Jamie was gone. And try, even though I didn't have to, there was no contractual obligation to do that, but I just wanted to show them rather than tell them that I was prepared for this opportunity.
Did you keep all of the subs that you had when you didn't have the chair?
I fired all of them the second I got the chair. No. I got the same one. Y'all are gone. Toast. Yeah.
Sick of
it's a new sheriff in town. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. You thought you knew this show? Get out of here. No. Same cats. Same drummers were subbing for me that were subbing for Jamie. I brought on a new sub, my friend Zach Mullings, amazing drummer that hadn't subbed on Broadway before, and I knew I wanted to give someone else the opportunity to come into this world that wasn't already subbing on 6 other shows. And he really rose to the challenge, killed it, and now he subs like on a bunch of different shows around town.
Yeah, it feels good to do that, and you bring somebody that's from the outside in, because they got to find a way in somehow. But at the same time, you have to be responsible to the bigger picture, which is the show. You got to make sure that they can do it. What do you do to make sure that a new person that hasn't prepared, what do you do to make sure that they're ready to step in?
I think I do a lot of due diligence. I talk to some other folks that have worked with them. If it's not someone that's a friend of mine, I mean, Zach, I really knew Zach had subbed for me in a bunch of pop situations beforehand that were not in the Broadway scene. And so for some of those gigs that he had subbed for me on, it was one, I had music direct and drum for an artist named Michael Blume and we were doing a bunch of festivals, and there was one that I was going to have to miss around the time that my son was born 4 years ago. And I remember I brought Zach in to sub for me, and he had made, handwritten charts, had notes on everything, directed the shit out of the band. He was so prepared, and the seriousness with which he took this gig that I had brought him in for let me know that he was prepared to take this other gig very seriously. And so I could tell he had an incredible attention to detail and worked a little harder than everybody else. And it was a pleasure to bring him into the Dear Evan Hansen fold. And yeah, I just knew he was going to kill it, just from like very transparent conversations about like how prepared he would have to be and how he would have to play it exactly the way that I do it.
People that want to reach out to someone like yourself and they want to get into the whole Broadway scene.
Sure.
There are things that people do that might turn people off. There are things that are like, oh my God, this person might be kind of interesting to bring in. What kind of things do you suggest someone do to reach out to someone like yourself, or even myself, or anyone else that plays shows, in order to try to break into the scene?
I think you never have to be apologetic when you're reaching out to someone who has a Broadway show, and just being very forward and transparent. I mean, I think honesty is the best policy, and like we're not. I don't think you have to disguise it like you really want to be my friend, or you want to like get coffee and learn more about me. Like I understand that I have a really great gig that I'm really thankful for, and I have the opportunity to have subs, and you either have room for subs or you don't. And so I think a lot of the nicest emails that I've received have just been very respectful to the fact that I have this job and that they would like to sub for me if the opportunity presented itself, and they would like to come and see me play the book, even though they know I don't need anyone in the moment. And yeah, I mean, I think the landscape's going to be different now post-pandemic in terms of folks coming to watch me play the show. Because, beforehand it was, just a little more relaxed, where if there was someone who 3 years down the line, I might need to sub, I would have no problem having them come and, watch me play the show. But now I think it needs to be someone who is going to be coming in, pretty soon. It has to be a real thing. So, I think I'm interested to see how it all looks and feels. I mean, you're going to be back in it before I will. So I'll be asking you how it feels. But, the situation for me is that, I'd love to hear from folks. And I think, just read through your email twice, make sure there's no typos. You're making a first impression on somebody. If I don't know you, let me know something about you in a short, make your email should not be more than 2 paragraphs. Probably shouldn't be more than 1 paragraph. And, you should try to know someone else in the scene that you can reference. And if you don't, there's easy ways to get to know other people in the scene, whether it's where they're playing around town, meeting them. It's music. People are playing around New York City. A lot of people in the bands that we both play in, Ain't Too Proud Band and the Dear Evan Hansen Band, they're playing around town. I think, you can find a way to know someone in the scene so that, Rob Jost, the bass player at Dear Evan Hansen, can say, oh yeah, I met this guy, at Rockwood last week when I was playing with this folk singer, and, really nice guy. You should have him in. You know what I mean? He's not a serial killer. You can bring him in. Like that's the energy that I think there just needs to be an awareness of what's going on.
You have endorsements with different drum companies. Peisty?
I do. Yeah, I play Peisty cymbals and Vic Firth sticks. Yeah, I love Peisty cymbals. I think they're really, versatile, great cymbals. Yeah, just really, I'm into it.
Now,
I'm into Vic Firth sticks, kind of like this, the standard in drumsticks. I really, just appreciate getting to play fresh sticks a lot of the time, just as a drummer on a nerdy level. It's really a great feeling when you get to play fresh sticks.
especially having 8 shows a week, or even doing 6 or 7. You go through a lot of sticks. Why Paiste and
That's
not
for sure.
Meinl or Zildjian?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, I'm not the biggest like drum nerd in those classic ways of like knowing the differences between things, and I definitely love the sound of Meinl cymbals. I love the sound of Zildjian cymbals. I just love the sound of drums and cymbals. But I felt like Paiste was really making some beautiful, like, complex cymbals for some of the jazz stuff that I play that I really appreciated. And another kind of like mentor and someone I really look up to is Steve Jordan and, Vinnie Colaiuta, all these guys that play it, these cymbals, Greg Hutchinson. I heard the ones that they were playing. I'm like, well, if they make those, that's awesome. So I was happy to basically take any opportunity I could to get some free swag. You know what I mean?
So speaking of great drummers, top 5 drummers of all time. Go.
Woo. Oh man, this is the hardest question you've asked me all day. The top 5 drummers for me of all time are Art Blakey, John Bonham, Tito Puente, Earl Palmer, and Bernard Purdie.
Starting 5.
Yeah, that's my all-star team. That's right. Bernard's playing big forward. He's in the paint.
Have a starting 5 drummers against another starting 5.
Right. I know. I'd probably have a different starting 5 if it was going to be on the court.
Well, mine would be like all 5 would be one guy. It'd be Tony Williams. Be shooting 3-pointers.
Nice. Yeah, just dunking. He's the Dr. J of drums for sure.
Man, speaking of Dr. J, I met him. That's another good thing about playing shows. Before we shut down, we were able to have people backstage and get to meet our heroes.
You got to meet Dr. J?
I got to meet Dr. J, dude. It's like, wow. I'm looking up, by the way. Nobody can see me.
You're like on a ladder. Yeah.
So I asked him after, his hand swallowing mine in a handshake. I was like, so who are your top 5 players of all time? He's like, man, it hasn't changed since I was 15. And he said, let's see if I can remember. I think he said Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. Oh my God. And there's 2 others. I was like, wait a minute. Michael Jordan, Shaq? No, it's like, no. Let me tell you again. Elgin Baylor. Jerry West. And he was like, he would not budge. I was like, Larry, Michael, you? He's like, nope. Let me tell you again. So yeah, it was
I love how basketball players, like, there's no NBA like their NBA. Like the NBA that they were in is different. You know what I mean? Like if they see guys, they're like, oh, he wouldn't have lasted a second in my NBA. Like they know.
Right.
Dr. J is like, yeah, Michael, Larry, like they were doing cute stuff, but like in my league, they wouldn't have done it. That's the energy, and I love that.
Are you into basketball at all?
I am, yeah.
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, man, this is like the golden age of basketball now. And he's a big basketball fan. And I was like, what? What do you mean? But he's like, he's never seen people. I know we're off topic here. It's Broadway drumming podcast, but
no, this is NBA drumming 101. Yeah.
Yes, we're merging the NBA and the National Drumming League.
That's right.
NDL.
The NDL. Yep.
So he was saying because he's never seen anyone shoot like James Harden, and the stuff that I guess that people do nowadays is just on a whole other level than what he's seen before. Now, I don't know how necessarily true that is, but thing about it, if you have a team that can run like the Lakers used to, you go down and score 2 points. Then you have the Golden State Warriors come down and you score 3 points. Who's going to win? The Golden State Warriors are going to win because they're scoring more points. And
it's just the odds. It's just the odds. I mean, they're just taking more threes. It's just a 3-point game now. The way that, even 10 years ago, it was in the paint way more, than now guys are just throwing them up from behind the arc. Cause I mean, the odds are in their favor, just from a statistics standpoint, that if they're shooting from back there all game, they're more than likely to win because they're such amazing shooters.
I know. It's crazy.
If you've ever been like close to the court. I remember growing up and like I was really into basketball and I went to it was like a Hartford Hawks basketball camp, and Ray Allen came to like visit, and this was when he was on the Bucks, and we each got to like guard him for like 30 seconds. That was like part of the camp thing where like, it was not, I mean, he was 9 times my size. I was probably like 4'4" at that point. You know what I mean? And he was just, the way that he shot a 3-pointer, it was like a free throw, like it was so effortless that you just think about, the way that we're talking about preparing for a show, so that the last thing you're thinking about is the music. The last thing he's thinking about is the shot. He's just thinking about everything else. The guy that's coming at him, the person like kicking him in the nads. He's just able to like get off the shot perfectly because it's, he spent the 1,000 hours, it's amazing.
So you had a chance to guard him or try to guard him.
It was this type of situation where, we're all like in 7th or 8th grade, and, you get to like run out and like feel what it's like to guard Ray Allen, but nobody even really guarded him. You just like walked out there and he would be like, pang,
Wow. So
you'd be like, if you put it on the ground. Yeah.
You play ball.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. I played in high school. Yeah.
What position?
It's all coming together. Yeah. Shooting guard.
Okay.
Yeah. I was the 2.
That's one thing I never really understood. I mean, I know we're kind of off topic, but
did you play in Manchester?
No, I didn't. My career ended, I think it was 1978. I went up against this guy. I think his name is Julio. I forgot his last name, but he had this afro, like, massive afro. And, it was auditions for the 8th grade basketball team. And I thought I was Dr. J. I was 4 feet tall, but I was dribbling, right? It was just me against Julio, who was 6 feet at the time. I was like, what? Tried to juke him. And I shot the ball, and he hit the ball, and it bounced into the stands up to like row F. I was like,
house seats.
F. That's what.
Wow.
And they were like, next. So that was the end of my career.
You were like, come on, Julio.
And
not cool.
I wound up just practicing after that, and I started playing drums, and here I am. So
yeah,
I will stay off the court unless I'm playing with my son, who we play from time to time, which I guess you do.
That's awesome.
You have a 4-year-old now?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. And he's, right now he's like, I'm trying to get him into like basketball, but he's so into animals that like, I pass him the ball and he's like, cheetah power. And he'll just like run away with the ball. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. You do you, man.
Is he into wildcrats?
So into wildcrats. That is the number one. It goes in my house. It's like Chris Kratt, Martin Kratt, mom, dad, in that order. That's the pecking order of idols.
Oh, man. When my kids were young, I used to listen to a lot of kids' music. I don't know why I did this, like Rafi, and again, these aren't bad people, Laurie Bruckner, and all that stuff. Right. And I talked to a friend of mine. He's like, yeah, we used to just listen to Motown. I was like, why didn't I think of that?
You're over here like, on adventures with the coolest creatures, from the oceans to the trees.
What's there are other TV shows, Wonder Pets, and oh my God, I couldn't wait for them to like get off of this kids music, but now they're they started listening to some. They don't like trap music, like I can't stand it either. But thank God, I grounded them properly with rap music. It's like, here, check this out. This is Grandmaster Flash. This is Run DMC. This is the Tribe Called Quest.
Right.
So they learned all the proper stuff, and
I hear you.
So, but now they listen to all the stuff. I don't even know what's. I can't say the right word. It's not hip. It's not cool. It's not lit anymore.
Right.
Fire. I don't know what the right word is.
It's great. I think great's going to come back. Great's making a comeback.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great. Anyway,
great.
what are some of the things that you're doing now musically that you're looking forward to or that you've been working on?
I work with an artist named Gideon King, and he's got a great band. He's a great guitarist and composer, and he's got a band with 3 singers in it that are all super stellar. He's got Mike Stephenson, a singer named Ashley Hess, and another singer, Caleb Hawley. And getting to work with that band, we just recorded some stuff in the studio last night. We're playing tonight in Brooklyn. It's an exciting band to be a part of. Just really excited. It's kind of like a newer Steely Dan-esque band. It's kind of fusion, kind of pop, all killing musicians in the group. So looking forward to, more to come with that band. But I'm playing this weekend out at the Monterey Jazz Festival with a great composer that I've worked with for years named Miho Hazama. And Miho writes some shit. She writes the hardest music you could imagine. And somehow it's complex and beautiful and ugly and sublime and has it's a real journey learning her music and trying to execute it. And so she sent out some new charts maybe 4 days ago. And it's probably today's Wednesday, the gig, we're going to rehearse on Friday out there and play the gig on Saturday. And that's what I was doing before we got on this call. It's just learning this. I have it all laid out over here. I'm just trying to figure it out. It's gnarly, man. There's just every way the music could be hard is hard in that way. It's like a Sudoku puzzle. Yeah. So I'm trying to just figure that stuff out. And we released a record last year called Dancer in Nowhere that was nominated for a Grammy. And she's got this band called M Unit. And it's cool. It's kind of like a large ensemble, but there's a string quartet. So there's a string quartet and then maybe 8 horns and rhythm section. But yeah, so I'm playing there this weekend. Really excited. We're on the same bill as Herbie Hancock and George Benson, and just excited to see some music and be out there, just taking it all in. I remember Monterey Jazz Festival has this killing, Indian rap little cart that has these chicken tikka masala naan wraps. So I'm super excited about those too. And yeah, that's what's happening this week.
Oh man, Monterey, California is beautiful.
I know. Yeah, I'm really excited to be back there. And I have some friends that I haven't seen that moved out to San Francisco from Brooklyn a couple years ago. So just excited to see some pals and trying to get this music learned so that I can have fun.
Yeah, I hear you.
And not be super stressed.
People can find you on social media, but I discovered one thing that was interesting in a New York Times article back in March of 2013. Very cool, my gosh.
Man. That still comes up. Yeah, we had our wedding was put in the Times, and so I feel like anytime anybody Googles me now, they're like, "Oh, congrats on the wedding." I'm like, man, that was 9 years ago. That's great.
So how did that come about? I'm just curious. It's really interesting.
The New York Times does an article maybe once a month or every week. I don't know what it is, in the vows section, where they give a shout out to a married couple. And so they pick one couple of the people who, just submit their names. Jake and Kate Goldbas are getting married on March 3rd or, maybe it was the 2nd or 3rd. I'm gonna be in trouble now, but she basically, my wife submitted our names, and because she's an opera singer, I'm a jazz drummer. We met at, Manhattan School of Music. We had kind of, an interesting backstory. We got reached out to by a New York Times reporter who wanted to do a full spread on the wedding and our story. So, in the midst of, the week before you get married, everything is so crazy. And in the midst of all that, it was this Times reporter. We had to meet her at a coffee shop and talk to her with the recorder on and about how we met. And then the reporter was at our wedding, and yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. But it was the last thing you need is something else to do the week of your wedding. There's a million people reaching out to you asking you questions and stuff. And now you got to go and talk to this reporter, but it's really a great way to memorialize, that day.
Yeah. That day was actually March 2nd. Cause I remember specifically.
Right. See, I knew that, and I wanted to see how deep you went into the article because I love March 2nd. Every time March 2nd comes around, I think, I love you, Kate. And that's what, that's what happens.
Yes, this is dedicated to you, Kate. And he remembers
That's
that there
right.
was a 19-piece orchestra there too. So,
hey, that's right. Yep. That's so funny.
As I'm reading the thing right now.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it says that Jake. Yeah, that's so funny. I love that.
So anyway, outside of that, where can people find you on social media?
So I think the best ways to find me on social media are probably Instagram at Jake Goldbas, just my name, Goldbas. Or I just started giving kind of tutorials through a new app called Mu School, MU School. And it's basically kind of like Cameo, but for musicians. So you can reach out with a question and I can respond in a 5-minute video or just a chat. And so it's all through the Mu School app. So yeah, you can find me on Mu School or Instagram or Facebook, anyway.
Great. Very nice talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better. And I wish you well on your show out there in California.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's nice to get to actually spend some time with you. I feel like our lives are so busy. Just getting to sit down and talk to you is a real treat for this time. So thanks for doing this and making a space.
And I'll see you on the Broadway campus in December.
I know. I'll see you next door. We'll be coming out of the stage door like, oh yeah, how are you getting home? Okay, yeah. A train's delayed. All right, cool. Yeah.
It always seems to be, man. Good.
I know. I look forward to that kind of monotony. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, man, thanks again. And we'll definitely be in touch soon.
All right. All the best. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. Head over to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page where you'll find unedited conversations that I've had with some of your favorite musicians. On the YouTube page, you're going to find bonus content that I don't feature on my Instagram page or here on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and click on that little bell at the top so that you'll be notified when a new video is uploaded. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more.